out of that building when building 2 comes down. That was the first one he hit. He gets thrown 1,000 yards with these 2 women, picked up from the force, the G-force of building 2 coming down. 1,000 yards into another building. He breaks all his ribs, his clavicle, gets a concussion. And for this next 6 months, he never missed a day of work. He went back in building 1 to get more people out. Now, I've been shot 3 times. My brother is the hero. All right? Getting shot, I thought was the biggest thing that happened to me, but watching my brother almost die and seeing how he is today, that he can't breathe, walking from here to that back of the room, that's hard to watch. But my brother's learned to forgive. He taught me a valuable lesson. He forgives, and he's forgiven people, and he's loved on them, and he says, he harbors no ill will towards anybody or anyone. So tonight, as we're worshiping and doing this service, keep that in the forefront of your mind. Sometimes I'm at a loss of words when I think about what happened today. You all watch it on TV, and we see it over and over and over, the planes hitting and people jumping out of the building. Virginia and I are going to do a song later called I Look to You. It's going to be a video shown. And you're going to see people jumping out of the window. I want you to understand how much faith it took to do such a thing. That at that last minute, they had to make a decision. Do I stay here and burn alive, or do I jump? Tough thing to do, folks. You know? And 15 years later, we got children in school that still do not know anything about 9/11. Sad. We're not teaching them what has happened in history. It all can't be good. We have to learn about the bad in order to appreciate the good. Amen? Amen. In order for us to feel the joy, we have to go through the sorrow. Amen? Amen. Folks, I love you and thank you, every one of you. And just turn to your neighbor and say thank you. Okay? Please do that. And we're going to begin our worship service.
When I walk through deep waters, I know that you will be with me. When I'm standing in the fire, I will not be overcome.
Broadcast live, this is something's going on at the World Trade Center. And they showed the hole in the first tower. And I sat there and it took a moment to actually process what was going on because, I mean, we're from New York. We're invincible. Nobody can hurt us. But I knew at that moment that something was wrong. And I stood there and as they started talking, I remember, filling up with tears. And my wife came out of her dressing room and she came out to see me, and I had tears running down my face. And she said, honey, what's wrong? And I said, the United States is under attack. There's something wrong. And I didn't even get the words out of my mouth in the second plane, the second tower. I knew that we were in trouble, and my mom happened to be working. At that time, she was the vice president of U.S. State newspapers. In White Plains, New York. She was the head of the accounting department. And I called my mom in New York, and I said, Mom, is everything okay? She said, well, what's the matter? And I said, well, New York's under attack. And she said, Jody, have you really gone crazy? And I said, no, it's all over the news. And she said, Jody, I'm sitting in USA newspapers headquarters, and all of a sudden the phone got quiet, and she said, "It's coming across the ticker tape right now." And throughout the days that followed, and every news station showed the pictures of those planes hitting the towers, and the towers collapsing, and the storms of dust coming down the streets of New York, and anxious family members trying to connect with ones that were missing. I actually lost a girl from my high school class, and also there was another, a DeLeo, that actually was killed in the thing. They were calling my parents saying, "We're sorry to hear about your son," but it wasn't me. All in all, nearly 3,000 people were lost that day in the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, the field in Pennsylvania. That day, 71 law enforcement officers were killed. 343 firefighters died that day. And some are still dying to this day because of exposure from dust and the toxic materials that were in that dust. We must keep all our military, all our police officers, our firefighters, our first responders in our prayers daily. They're on the forefront. They are the ones that protect us. The Bible tells us that in the end times that lawlessness will abound. And I believe that the actions that took place on that day, on September 11, 2001, proves that we are in those times. But there was also healing that came from that day. Strangers became friends. There was no black and no white. There was no Republican or Democrats. There was no liberal or conservatives. People openly prayed in the streets. People were donating blood in New York at record numbers. People were displaying the American flag. Our churches were filled to capacity. For one day, for one moment in time, we were all Americans at that time. We drew strength from one another and from God to find healing and to face the future, not but one, but all together. But as Christians, we know the outcome of this story. If you read the book of Revelation at the end, we know who comes back. We know who is the king. We know the one that wins the story. The evil one is going to try to use every tactic that he possibly can to come against us. But we know the one true king that will win.
You're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing beauty from ashes. For you will have your bride, free of all her guilt, rid of all her shame, and known by her true name. And that's why I sing your praise will never be on my lips, never be on my lips. Your praise will never be on my lips, never be on my lips. Your praise will never be on my lips, never be on my lips. Your praise will never be on my lips, never be on my lips. You will be praised, you will be praised. And angels and saints will sing worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints will sing worthy are you, Lord.
You know, we've talked a lot about honoring the first responders, and many of these men and women were courageous men who not just laid down their lives for a friend, which Jesus says is like the height of love, but they took it a step further and they laid down their lives for strangers. And it was an incredible thing, and they need to be remembered and they need to be honored. But I want to look at it from a different side this evening. I want to talk to you about how this tragedy should affect us. You know, when you think about it, nearly 3,000 people lost their lives. It was the most devastating attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor. And typically when the conversation turns to 9/11, the word that typically comes up in people's minds is why? Why did this happen? Why did God allow this tragedy to happen? Well, in Luke's Gospel, chapter 13, some men came to Jesus and they wanted to know what he thought about a tragedy that occurred in their day. You see, Pontius Pilate had killed, murdered in cold blood a group of men on the Temple Mount. And along with that, one of the great towers there fell down and killed 18 people. One was an incident of state-sponsored terrorism, and the other was a random accident. But both tragedies saw people's lives snuffed out with little warning and for no apparent reason. And Jesus implies in this text that these victims did nothing wrong, that is, nothing that would cause their demise. They were simply caught off guard by circumstances of life. And although these events provided an opportunity for Jesus to defend God against charges of mismanaging the universe, he doesn't go there. Instead, he seizes the opportunity to call each of us to examine our own lives. And Jesus replied to these men and he said this, "I tell you, unless you repent, you too will perish." You see, in the face of tragedy and devastation and injustice, our tendency is to ask why. But Jesus says to those who are living, you ought to be asking what? What should this tragedy teach us about ourselves, about life and death? In fact, the Lord's answer, he implies that tragedies teach us that life is fragile and it is fleeting, and therefore there is a great urgency for each of us to get right with God before we too die, and we will die. And then we will give an account of ourselves at the judgment seat.
As I lay me down, heaven hear me now. I'm lost without a cause, after giving it my all. Winter storms have come and darkened my sun. After all that I've been through, on earth can I turn to? I look to you. I look to you. After all my strength is gone, you can be strong. I look to you. I look to you. And when melodies are gone, you hear a song. I look to you. About to lose my breath. There's no more fighting left. Sinking to rise no more. Searching for that open door. And every road that I've taken led to my